How much does not look at?
Carlos Curbelo said, common sense legislation that does not restrict Second Amendment rights is an important first step in addressing gun violence in our country. It is because we agree with Representative Curbelo that we affirm. Resolved, the United States federal government should pass a Curbelo-Moulton bill to enhance gun control in the United States. We provide the following definitions. Definition 1. Merriam-Webster explains that should means to express an obligation or to which something is morally bounded. Definition 2. The Curbelo-Moulton bill is defined as prohibiting the manufacture, possession, or transfer of any part or combination of parts that is designed and functions to increase the rate of fire on semi-automatic rifles, but does not convert the semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun and for other purposes. We provide the following observations. Observation 1. Because I believe that the most important thing in this round is lives. We believe that lives are a prerequisite to having rights. As should represents a moral obligation, we believe that the side who can save the most lives should win the debate. Observation 2. According to USA Today on October 5, 2017, the National Firearms Act of 1986 made manufacturing, owning, or transferring automatic weapons all but illegal, requiring those who own automatic weapons manufactured before the act to pay exorbitant fees and pass extensive FBI background checks. There is a loophole, however, to this law that allows for devices such as bump stocks, hellfire triggers, and rotating trigger actuators to increase the rate of fire on semi-automatic weapons to resemble that of an automatic weapon without going through the same regulations. Contention 1. Banning rapid-fire devices is necessary for saving lives. According to CNN on November 10, 2017, the deadliest mass shooting in the United States had multiple rapid-fire devices attached to several guns. These devices played a key role in injuring over 500 people and the deaths of 58 people. If we look to the second largest mass shooting in the United States, or in Orlando, Florida, at the Pulse nightclub, we can see, according to New York Times on October 5, 2017, that there were 24 shots fired in 9 seconds. With rapid-firing devices, Paddock was able to shoot 90 shots in 10 seconds. This is 4 times as many shots as the Orlando shooter. If the Pulse nightclub shooter had attached rapid-firing devices to his weapon, there would have been more casualties. Stephen Paddock was able to fire off so many shots in succession because he had altered his legal semi-automatic rifles with bump stocks, which were purchased legally and enabled his rifle to shoot up to 700 rounds per minute, according to USA Today on October 5, 2017. Explained by the New Yorker on October 4, 2017, Paddock equipped his weapons with bump stocks, hellfire triggers, and rotating trigger actuators. These devices enable rapid fire on semi-automatic weapons and allow for a ridiculous number of rounds to be fired in a short amount of time. These devices help exponentially increase the number of lives impacted because of how they worked. By banning rapid-fire devices, we can close a loophole that allows for semi-automatic weapons to function similarly to automatic weapons. We can look to our current laws to see why common sense gun legislation can save lives but do not infringe on our Second Amendment rights. We currently require drivers in the United States to take extensive training and testing before they are allowed to receive their driver's license. We also have laws that limit the speed one can go or when it is necessary for someone to come to a stop. There's also a wide range of legal vehicle modifications. This is because the people in the government of the United States have a social contract that allows for the government to limit civil liberties when it is in the best interest of the whole population. Regulating modifications on semi-automatic guns allows for the government to take away a small civil liberty to own rapid-firing devices for the benefit of the greater good. According to Christian Science Monitor on October 4, 2017, bump stocks are an amusement because they don't, under normal circumstances, turn an AR-15 or another rifle into a killing machine, because you can't hit anything with it. Only when you are presented 400 yards away with a field of uninterrupted humanity would something like this even be effective. This means that devices such as bump stocks are not even useful unless the goal is to bring mass chaos and destruction. Contention 2. The status quo has already been set to ban on rapid-firing devices. According to CNN on November 9, 2017, Massachusetts is the first state since the deadly shooting in Las Vegas last month to ban bump stocks. Beginning in 2018, penalties for the possession or use of bump stocks or trigger cranes in Massachusetts will range from probation to life in prison. Explained by NPR on November 4, 2017, Massachusetts is, however, not the first state with bump stock bans in the books. Long-standing gun regulations in California include punishments aimed at any device that allows firearm to discharge 2 or more shots in a burst of activating the device. November 27, 2017, the Washington Examiner reported that in Minnesota, it is a felony to own, possess, or operate trigger activators. And in New York, it is illegal to attach bump stocks to semi-automatic firearms. The New York State Legislature, though, is considering a bipartisan bill to ban the devices outright, closing a loophole that permits the sale and possession of bump stocks. Several New York lawmakers introduced the bill to explicitly outlaw the devices, and legislators in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Vermont, Hawaii, Maine, and South Carolina are planning to introduce similar proposals in early 2018, as stated by NBC News on November 23, 2017. This sort of ban is also being discussed on the local level as Mayor of Columbia, South Carolina proposed an ordinance that would ban the possession of guns with bump stocks or trigger cranks attached to them. Nevada, a state with some of the most lenient gun laws in the United States, is taking steps of their own to ban or restrict access to bump stocks stated by the Washington Examiner on November 27, 2017. The federal government needs to show that we listen to the needs of the citizens. By passing the Cabello-Moulton bill, the U.S. government can officially come to a consensus with the citizens to pass common sense legislation. Thus, we urge an affirmative ballot.
They who can give up official liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Because we agree with Benjamin Franklin, the opposition negates today's resolution. Resolved, the U.S. federal government should pass the Cabello-Moulton bill to enhance gun control in the United States. For the purpose for this debate, we offer the following definition. Definition 1. The Cabello-Moulton bill, defined by the House government, is defined by the following. To amend Title 18 of the United States Code to prohibit the manufacture, possession, or transfer of any part or combination of parts that is designed and functions to increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle, but does not convert the semi-automatic rifle into a machine gun, and for other purposes. For this purpose of this debate, we will simply this with the colloquial definition of a bump stock, which is defined as definition 2. A bump stock, defined by the New York Times, is a piece of equipment that can be attached at will to a firearm that utilizes the power of a gun's recoil to apply constant pressure to the trigger of a semi-automatic rifle, allowing it to fire at a rate comparable to an automatic rifle. Definition 3. A semi-automatic rifle defined by the American government is a rifle that only fires when the trigger is pulled and cannot continuously fire like an automatic rifle. Definition 4. Mass shootings are defined by the Congressional Research Services as any single incident in which 3 or more people are killed. Today, we negate the resolution resolved. The U.S. federal government should pass the Cabello-Moulton bill to enhance gun control in the United States. For the purpose of this debate, we offer the following observation. Observation 1. This debate deals specifically in the realm of a bump stock as had been defined. Any attempt by the government to bring this debate to a larger realm of gun control avoid the topic at hand. Observation 2. Any states that has this law have done so separate from the U.S. federal government and should not be held as a standard because of their disparate conditions. Observation 3. This debate, which stands in session to negate the resolution, is not required to prove solvency beyond providing a case for negation of the resolution on federal level. Observation 4. Bump stocks have not been an issue on mass shootings nor homicides until now. So the gun policy experts continuing with the ban would be a negligible act. To negate today's resolution, the opposition provides the following contention. Bump stocks control does not equal gun control. This legislation would not lead to further gun control. Bump stocks are not a problem. Contention 1. Because of the resolution deals with banning bump stocks, and since the definition of bump stocks have already been provided, then you can clarify that any argument besides the resolution at any hands will be considered irrelevant and dismissed immediately. Bump stocks alone have 1. Never killed anyone, and 2. The only incidents of mass shootings of bump stocks is the one that happened in Vegas on October of 2017, and is a direct result of why this resolution has formed in the first place. Furthermore, increasing rates of fire when you already can fire so many rounds a minute is a weak attempt at protection and effective measure in preventing gun control people. As long as we have semi-automatic rifles in this country, there are lines and options of a single person to kill doesn't form. Bump stocks are a gun part and thus are not regulated under the Gun Control Act of the National Firearms Act. Contention 2. This legislation will not lead to further gun control. Any states that have passed this law done so separate from the U.S. federal government, it should not be held as a standard because of their disparate conditions. Concurrently passing bump stock legislation will not lead to further gun control. Passing any type of legislation is difficult in this country and likely to alienate a constituent base. However, the bill is something most Americans can agree on. Voting on this bill is unlikely to promote further bills as it puts politicians into the comfortable position of having passed something that everyone agrees on without angering the pro-gun base. According to CNN polls of last year, 55% of people say that they want to have stricter gun laws rather than 42% that don't. Also, 52% of people believe that gun laws should be more strict compared to how they were in previous decades. Research from the Harvard Business Schools have found that there have been over 20,000 gun-related legislation law have been proposed over the past 25 years, and over 3,000 of them end up becoming laws. The researchers looked into mass shootings between the years of 1990 and 2014 and have found two things that stood out to them. Mass shootings have increased gun-related bills that have been proposed and passed, and the gun laws depends on the political party which states they represent. Contention 3. According to April Feely, an associate professor of Michigan State Law School of Criminal Justice, says, until now, bump stocks have been a non-issue from a firearm homicide. Also, 32 gun policy experts in the fields of criminology, public health, and law and say, and I quote, a ban would probably have a negligible effort on mass shooting deaths. So, pretty much it. I urge you to vote for the opposition.
As a brief off-time roadmap, I will be attacking their case and then building up our case if we have time. First of all, they say that the banning bump stocks would be temporary safety, and that's just not true because you would have, it's one part of gun control that would officially be started, and so that would actually be taking a step in the right direction of protecting our citizens, and what we're here to do is save lives. Their contention 1, they said that they're claiming that the Cabrillo-Moulton bill is not gun control. That's simply not true because it's a part of a gun and it doesn't work for anything else but a gun, so it's prohibiting certain usage of guns. They also said they only. Okay, so the Colton bill defines as prohibiting the manufacture, possession, or transfer of any part or combination of parts that is designed to increase the rate of fire. So that's not just bump stocks, and they only focus on bump stocks throughout their whole speech. And they also said that it never killed anyone. Clearly it did in Las Vegas, and they failed to mention that it's the worst mass shooting in American history of the shootings. And bump stocks is directly the reason it was the worst mass shooting. So that part isn't true. And then going on to contention 2, they said they will not lead, that it won't happen because legislation is difficult to pass. Well, that's just not right. That's like saying, well, we shouldn't make a change because it's too hard, and that doesn't help solve anything. We wouldn't get anything solved in this country. And then on to say, they said, okay, so they recognize that there is a problem with mass shootings, and and this is our first step. This is because we can ban bump stocks and other fire triggering devices. That would be a start to banning it. And according to the Christian Science Monitor on October 4, 2017. Make no mistake, Wickerham is adamantly opposed to any further federal or state regulations. We agree on this step. So yeah, it would be a part of legislation. And not to mention, when I said it was the worst mass shooting, the mass shooting that happened in Orlando that didn't have bump stocks used, 49 were killed and 50 were injured. In Las Vegas, the mass shooting, the worst one, 59 were killed and over 500 were injured. That is a major increase from 50 injured to 500 injured with the use of a bump stock. So please take that into account when we're thinking of how many lives are affected just by bump stocks. Also, the fact that people don't want bump stocks. No one was interested until the Las Vegas shooting. It was stated in the Independent that Georgia gun store in Gainesville, Georgia had no request for bump stocks until that shooting, and all of a sudden they had a spike in semi-automatic bump stocks and other firing devices that would help them. And also, they said that states are separate and that doesn't mean that the federal government should take any action. That's simply not true because the people, the states, are showing that they want a change. And yes, that could slowly happen over the states, but if we do it faster by making the federal government regulate it, that will save more lives in a quicker span of time. Yeah, so they said, and then it's not an issue until now, which is true, which is why we should make a change now. Thus, we urge an affirmative ballot.
To finish our third contention, continuing the experts, we were able to recontact throughout the banning of stocks was likely to have a small effect on mass shooting fatalities. They ranked it similarly to requiring gun owners to complete safety training. This clearly ranks banning bump stocks as having nothing to do with affecting mass shootings and causes. The only reason this bill is being brought up is because of the incident that occurred in Las Vegas. However, according to 32 gun policy experts, passing this bill is not going to solve anything. This means that the bump stock ban doesn't create solvency and actively harms discourse about further legislation. In the aftermath of mass shootings, gun legislation favors deregulation. To bring up the point that y'all said about the bump stocks directly kill people, and in the Las Vegas that directly harmed and killed the citizens. Bump stocks is the murder weapon, that they're a murder weapon is a fallacy. Individually, a bump stock cannot kill people. The semi-automatic rifle can kill people. Okay, in the New England Journal of Medicine, the prevention of future mass killings should begin with making it far more difficult to obtain semi-automatic firearms, especially ones that can be easily converted into automatic weapons. Also stated in the New England Journal of Medicine, if semi-automatic weapons are to continue to be sold, they should be manufactured in a way that prevents their conversion to automatic firing mode. There should be stricter limits on the size of magazines for assault rifles and limits on purchases of huge ammunition stores for these weapons of war. A background check did not stop this killer in the Las Vegas shooting, but tighter background checks can keep war weapons out of the hands of those who are known to be mentally unstable.
Okay, so what use other than recreation can the bump stock be used for?
The bump stocks are just an accessory. One second. The bump stocks, you said they are part of the gun. It was stated that they are part of the gun. And the bump stocks are, like we said in our in one of our definitions, the second definition, a bump stock is a piece of equipment that can be attached at will to a firearm that utilizes the power of a gun's recoil. So it is not part of the gun, like we said. It is an accessory. In the New York Times, it was stated that 32 gun policy experts in the field of criminology, law, and public health say that banning bump stocks is a negligible offense. 32 gun policy experts say banning bump stocks is likely to have a small effect on mass shooting fatalities. They ranked it similarly to requiring gun owners to complete safe training. Y'all mentioned deadliest, and 49 were killed in the Orlando shooting, like you said. And you said bump stocks are the direct result of more people getting injured. There's only a few difference between that people were killed in Orlando shooting and bump stocks, like you said, are not the issue. And it wasn't the bump stocks that killed them, it was the semi-automatic weapon. And to get a semi-automatic weapon, for all these shootings that have been, like Sandy Hook and Connecticut, these were all used by semi-automatic weapons. And the only things you need to get a gun to own a semi-automatic weapon is a valid driver's license or identification card, a current demographic, address, contact, and employment information, residential and employment information for the last 5 years, information regarding any psychiatric, drug, alcohol, or criminal history, and valid email address and valid credit card. And I urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you.
As a brief off-time roadmap, I'm going to be defending a case, and then if I can, I'm going to go back. They said semi-automatics kill people, and bump stock is just an accessory. But that is an accessory that, and you guys brought up that only 49 people were killed in Florida, and in Vegas only 59 were killed, and but 50 other lives were injured in Florida mass shooting, whereas over 500 were affected in the Vegas shooting because of the bump stocks. And bump stocks do not have any other reason other than, and they're not accurate. So if a person is using to defend themselves, they are not accurate enough to be aiming right. They drop their lives is the most important thing, Judge. I'd like to extend this vote. In Las Vegas shooting, 90 shots were shot in 10 seconds, where in Orlando shooting it was 29 shots in 9 seconds. And according to USA Today on October 5th, 2017, gun groups could apply the same argument to bump stock that they do on gun regulation as a whole. Banning guns does not mean that they go away. They just fall into the wrong hands. But to date, the most absolute ban on automatic rifles has been pretty effective, and their use is exceedingly rare. Bump stocks and tricky cranks make a mockery of that. The negative should not have ground to introduce a new legislation about banning semi-automatics. Judge, they need to focus on the disadvantages of implementing this bill. Common sense legislation that does not restrict Second Amendment rights is an important step in addressing gun violence in our country. By banning devices that blatantly circumvent already existing laws, we can show that Congress is capable of working constructively to make Americans safer. And I would like to...
Are bump stocks currently illegal?
No. But it is 600 people that are being injured in Vegas shooting, whereas 100 people that were killed or injured in Vegas Florida shooting. But yes, they are illegal in some states. States like Massachusetts. They have a ban on bump stocks. that allows a firearm to discharge 2 or more shots in a burst by activating the device. California is another state that has a same ban on bump stocks. And the biggest shooter had bump stocks on 12 of 23 guns that was found in his hotel room, which shows that the status quo has already seen a ban on rapid fire devices. Thus, we urge an affirmative ballot.
Am I good? And I guess begin. So they said that is okay. So they compared a lot about the Orlando shooting, saying that there was only 50 lives injured. And they said with the increase in bump stocks, that it increased to 500 lives injured. I want to make a note that in the Orlando shooting, 320 people in the nightclub, whereas in the Vegas shooting, there was 22,000 people in at the concert. That means that you do have a higher chance of people being injured. So I'd like to negate their fact and say it's irrelevant that they bring that up. Another point they made is saying that they actually agreed with our case. They said it is true that that pump stocks, that it is a problem. But I would like to point out that in 2010, bump stocks were made legal to purchase, so they have been around for 7 years. And I would like to say that there are also, this is all according to Vox.com, that there are hundreds of ways to turn a semi-automatic rifle into an automatic comparable weapon at home with access to a reasonably stocked garage. This means that people will still be able to make their bump stocks regardless if this bill gets passed. I would like to make that noted. And that in 2013, Senator Dianne Feinstein proposed a bill banning bump stocks and similar modifications after the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, in Connecticut, but the bill didn't even make it to the floor. How come now it's only, actually a huge tragedy has occurred that we're banning the bump stocks? I would like to point out that this bill should have been proposed way before, but since it's being brought up now after an incident has happened that should not have happened. I would also like to say that bump stocks are inaccurate when it comes to shooting, because according to KRGV Channel 5 news station, Channel 5's Ryan Laza went to a gun expert, Brian Guerrera, and witnessed the differences between a regular semi-automatic rifle and one with an attached bump stock. The differences Laza saw was, quote, it increases gun firing rate, though it does not carry the same consistency.
You have 3 minutes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Also, U.S. Army Sergeant First Class Special Forces Tony Crowden indicated the Vegas attack was not as deadly as he could have been had he attacked with the bump stock. This clearly shows that even though bump stocks allow someone to shoot more rounds per minute, they do not hold the same consistency as legally purchased semi-automatic rifles. We can see that there has been continuous deadly shootings across the U.S. That have not had bump stocks. Just because this one has it doesn't mean it would make it any worse. It would actually make it less worse because the accuracy was way off. And they bring up status quo. I would like to attack that, saying that they brought up status quo, and as the opposition, we aren't advocating that nothing changes. We're simply stating that the proposed change is not effective, and we disagree with the proposed by the government. Negation is not responsible for creating solvency. I'd like to have that noted. And and another attack on the status quo. The government claims we argue for the status quo. We refute that on the basis, again, that we do not. Passing the bill in its current form would actually defend the status quo. So that is a contradiction on their part. It's a fallacy. As we've proven that bump stocks are not part of the larger issue with gun control because they are just an accessory, not an actual part of the gun. They actually, and as they've only been in use in one major mass shooting, bump stocks are not the big concern, and the regulation would not make a marked change, according to Vox.com and the New York Times. So with the information I've presented, that the mass shootings would actually be more inaccurate with bump stocks because of my backing up that the bump stocks are more inaccurate. Reiterating that it is just an accessory, that it is not part of the gun, meaning that bump stocks have never actually killed anyone. I negated their status quo. It is, and I would
15 seconds.
15 seconds. I would urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you.
Just a brief off timer back. I'm probably gonna spend the whole time defending our case. All right. Are you ready? Cool. So he talks about the status quo. The job of the negative is to actually defend the status quo. We are here to implement a bill where we show an affirmative world where your job is to say that this affirmative world has these negative disadvantages. Also, please judge, remember, they have not addressed lives as the most important thing in this debate. Please extend that all the way across the flow. That is our job. That is what we're saying our solvency is that by implementing this bill, we are solving lives. And they have not addressed that. It's all just saying like bump stocks are this inaccurate thing. By banning bump stocks, we can prove that we save at least one life, and that is because if you look at like they're saying like we said it was separate, like the bump stock was separate from the gun. Actually, over and over again, we use rapid firing devices because the bill actually states in itself that the Corbella Molten Bill is the manufacture, possession, or transfer of any part or combination of parts that design functions to increase the rate of fire. This does not just mean bump stocks. This means hellfire triggers or also trigger rotating actuators. You cannot just limit this debate to bump stocks because it takes away ground from the affirmative. And then you also want to talk about Orlando versus Vegas. Okay, so we can definitely look at those statistics. If you want to go 600 versus 100 people's lives were impacted directly. Yes, the numbers were completely different, but I would argue that if the Orlando shooter had bump stocks or rapid firing devices on his weapon, he would have wiped out all 300 people in that club versus
Wait,
just.
can you really say that he would have killed all 300 people?
I can definitely say that, and that was the affirmative is arguing for. Also, we say that this is a utilitarian case. We are arguing that whoever can save the most lives, who can do the best for the greater good, will win this debate. If we have to take away bump stocks from the few to benefit the many, us as an affirmative will do that. All right, and then you also want to talk about how all these people are going against it. According to Time Magazine on October 5th, 2017, the National Rifle Association on Thursday said that devices should be subject to additional regulations. Literally the biggest organization in the United States that has put bans, that has stopped bans on guns over and over again. It says it should be implemented. Because guess what?
Is Times a policy magazine?
Times is just a magazine. You guys were using little city sources. Those aren't really policy magazines either. So if we also want to keep going, I have other things that say the NRA supports it, such as the New Yorker, the Independent, CNN, so that's completely irrelevant, Judge. Also, if you want to keep going, they have no ground to introduce legislation that bans semi-automatic weapons. Their sole job, like I said earlier, is to say why our legislation has disadvantages and stops the status quo. So, and Adam even said, oh yeah, we argue against their status quo. That is your job to implement the status quo. And we're saying that in your status quo, in your world, we are seeing states already implement this. We are saying that us as Congress can implement this faster because we can do it in a shorter amount of time. So not only do we do this and let's say we let the states do it if you guys want to keep your status quo, the states will end up doing it themselves, which our whole second contention. They do it themselves, they'll finish it in a few years. We do it now, we finish it today. So then we do it through the whole United States and not just one state by state basis.
Point of order, isn't that an argument against the bill if you're arguing that
states.
No, we're saying states are doing it. We're saying we can do it faster, so we're solving faster. We are literally showing that states are doing this in your status quo. We are showing that it's happening, and we actually solve for it faster. That's like a refutation of time frame. Also, if you want to look, let's see. What else did I star? Dianne Feinstein. They talk about Dianne Feinstein's bill after Sandy Hook. If you want to go to NPR on November 4th, 2017, Dianne Feinstein in the Senate, right now we're the House. The Senate is doing the same bill. There's actually a show that there's a change. It is the same bill, word for word definition. Dianne Feinstein's putting it through one, we're putting it through the House. We're saying that we should do it like you're seeing it in the status quo. You talked about evidence from Sandy Hook, that's irrelevant because it doesn't deal with bump stocks or any other rapid fire triggering devices.
Point of order, you brought up Orlando, and that has nothing to do with
Yes, it does, because it's the second largest mass shooting compared to the first largest mass shooting. And if you want to, like, where you're saying that, like, if you compare the two, you definitely see why we should ban bump stocks, because, like, the massive difference between our largest mass shooting and our second largest mass shooting. That's an article about the CNN that lists every mass shooting in the United States in order. Also, you say it's inaccurate. We agree. You know, according to Christian Science Monitor on October 4th, we say that they are inaccurate. And the sole use of bump stocks is when you point them at a field of humanity, which is the people in this room, and you kill them, right? 59 people died, 500 injured. Everybody in here would be dead, and the people outside this room would be injured. Judge, think about that. Extend lives. Extend that we save lives when we pass this event, and thus the affirmative urges an affirmative ballot. Fuck. May I get water?
Okay, so to write a brief outline roadmap, I will be attacking their case, and if I have time, defending our own. Alright. First of all, they want to talk about the status quo. Alright, let's talk about the status quo. The status quo is that bump stocks are not currently being used in mass shootings. There have been several mass shootings since the incident with Las Vegas, and we haven't seen a bump stock since. Bump stocks are not the bigger issue. The bigger issue is that we have semi-automatic rifles in this country that can harm people in a way that we don't even understand fully right now. They like to talk about Orlando but say we can't talk about Newton. I'm sorry that children's lives mean less than people at a nightclub or people at a concert, but they matter. I'm still in my first minute, you can't interrupt me. Now, going on. Experts say that this is negligible. Banning a bump stock is not going to stop people from dying. What's going to stop people from dying is when we actually take a look and start changing things for the better. Bump stock is negligible. 32 experts have said that this will actually hurt people. Now let's talk about some of the things that they said in their earlier speeches. They said that we did not mention the largest mass shooting in this country. Neither have they. The largest mass shooting in this country happened in 1921. It was the Tulsa race riot. 300 people were killed. I'm sorry that black lives don't matter as much as those going to concerts, but those people were killed without a bump stock. Following, there were a murder at the Sacramento River where hundreds of people were killed. A Lane massacre, hundreds of people were killed. Mass shootings have happened in this country without bump stocks. They have killed more people than they can even count. Going on. Back to my other case. They say that we cannot claim that this bill, we can't argue with the bill, we have to argue for the status quo. Well, bump stocks are a non-issue when it comes to the status quo. What we're dealing with is a one-time incident. We are dealing with an emotional response to a massacre. And yes, we deserve action. We deserve people crying for these people who died. But we do not deserve to ban something that will change nothing and hurt others. If lives is the most important thing that you want to talk about, then do something that matters. Don't ban a bump stock, which is an accessory, which is not regulated under the Federal Gun Parts Act. It is not regulated under federal gun control and should not be discussed as part of larger gun legislation because it is not a gun. Banning a bump stock would be like banning a scope. It would be like banning a stamp. It is not a gun. It has not killed a single person. Unless you want to go out with a bump stock and hit someone in the head and kill them, then that's not how you're dealing with a bump stock. A bump stock is an accessory. It's a card that you can take on and off at will. If you want to ban a bump stock, fine. You better ban garages across this country, which is where people will be making alternatives to bump stocks. Finally, they also mentioned that we only talk about bump stocks. That's fine. Name another piece of equipment used in the Las Vegas shooting that directly impacted the Corbello-Moulton Act.
Good point of information.
Go ahead.
Hellfire trigger, rotating trigger actuator.
And that's something that showed up in the Las Vegas Act, which is the direct response to.
Yes,
Did it show up?
according to information from, let's see,
I'm not going to give you time to read
New York
this.
October 2014.
Okay.
Hellfire trigger was actually added, which when you do it, it puts the
All right,
right
I'm
back
going to
in
reclaim my
position.
time. Now, bump stocks have made it harder to kill. Experts say that if he did not have a bump stock on his gun, he would have been able to kill more people. Why? Because semi-automatic rifles need to be adjusted between firing. You cannot have a gun go off constantly, have that recoil hit your shoulder, and continue to accurately fire at people. This is what a bump stock does. A bump stock limits the amount of people killed. There were 22,000 people in that crowd. Thousands. 59 were killed. That is only 10 more than the Las Vegas or than the Orlando shooting, which they claim is the second biggest mass shooting in this country. But no, there have been only 10 extra lives. This man had 10 guns. He had 30 guns waiting for him at home. He could have shot so many more people, but he didn't. Why? Because he had an inaccurate weapon. Because he was not prepared to shoot with that amount of speed and that amount of time. Now, if you want to save lives, if you want to help people, go with the experts that say that this is a negligible act. The New England Journal of Medicine said that if you want to prevent mass killings, you have to make it more difficult to attain semi-automatic rifles. Banning a bump stock does not keep a gun out of one single murderer's hands. What it does is it makes Republicans in Congress feel better about voting down every single piece of gun legislation that comes up. It makes Democrats feel better about voting against their constituents. It makes politicians happy at the risk of killing us.
Point of information.
And I'm in my last minute. You cannot interrupt me. If you want to help people, you cannot go with the government. They do not save lives. They are hypocrites, and they're not arguing for us. I urge you to vote for the opposition.
What was your name? Emily. No, I just.
No screaming this time, I promise. Judge, ready?
Yes.
We began our case with a statement by Senator Carlos Corbello claiming that common sense legislation that does not restrict Second Amendment rights is an important first step in addressing gun violence in our country. When it comes down to one thing, no civil right can be nearly as important as lives. Being alive is a prerequisite to having any source of rights provided. Even if we can save one life from passing this bill, we will consider our debate won. They claim that bump stocks are not a problem and cannot individually kill people. However, we are fighting to ban any form of accessories that is designed to increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle, including hellfire triggers and rotating trigger actuators. They argue that this was not an issue until the mass shooting of Las Vegas. However, they fail to mention that this was the deadliest mass shooting in the United States, with 11 more deaths and 500 more injuries than the second largest in Orlando, Florida. By acknowledging that there is a strong history of mass shootings in the United States, they agree with our argument that there is an issue with the status quo and that the use of bump stocks increases the problem. According to the Christian Science Monitor, bump stocks are an amusement because they don't, under normal circumstances, turn an AR-15 or another rifle into a killing machine because you can't hit anything with it. Only when you are presented 400 yards away with a field of uninterrupted humanity would something like that even be effective. They argue that bump stocks are useless due to their inaccuracy. However, from a certain distance of more than 400 yards away, it is clearly accurate enough to shoot 500 people and kill almost 60. We have shown that states are already pushing for this bill to pass. Massachusetts has already made all rapid-fire devices illegal. California, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, Vermont, Hawaii, Maine, and South Carolina are already planning to introduce similar proposals. We are well on the way to ban these devices, so passing this bill will speed up the process. Also, all of this legislator is bipartisan. It is equally through Republicans and Democrats. They never mention being able to save lives, which is something we have said from the beginning. This is a step we need to save these lives. we urge an affirmative ballot.
Caitlin. Okay, so Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that basic needs of a person are those of psychological needs and those of safety needs, safety and security. The Corbella-Malton bill enhances the aspect of gun control by putting a ban on those accessories which increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle, but does not convert these semi-automatic rifles into machine guns. In the aftermath of the Las Vegas shooting and the fear of bump stocks, this bill has been proposed to others. This was the first mass shooting with the use of bump stocks. Yes, being the most deadly in recent years and awakening the country, it was not the deadliest mass shooting, which we mentioned before was the Tulsa race riots, without the use of bump stocks or accessories. Yes, lives are the most important, but a majority of mass shootings have been those of assault rifles, pistols, Glocks, and semi-automatics in these mass shootings that has broken much of this country, such as Orlando, Virginia Tech, and Sandy Hooks. Those who agree with this bill are, yes, making a step towards safety of the people, but it ignores the effect that the majority of mass shootings in America are those used by just normal guns or semi-automatic rifles that you can buy at Walmart. The opposition rallies that bump stocks control does not equal gun control, as well as legislation will not lead to further gun control, as well as bump stocks are not the problem. Even in despite of everything needed to own a gun, 1 in 5 guns do not fully go through a background check, according to the Chicago Tribune. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, or the ATF for short, have cleared bump stocks for sale for consumers in 2010. Yes, Massachusetts is the first to ban bump stocks and these accessories, and the following of others, but that is not the problem at hand, which is semi-automatic rifles. Many times, those who wish to have access to enhancing their gun rating fire will find a way to do so no matter what. If there's a will, there's a way. This country has been shaken and awoken to the fear of mass shootings in the recent years. Parents of students fear sending their children to school, whether that be elementary to college. People fear going to music festivals, fearing for their lives will be at stake, just trying to have some fun with their friends. People fear sometimes just going outside or going to a supermarket because it's a crowd of people. They do not fear bump stocks, but they fear accessories that increase the fire, but they do fear those of guns and semi-automatic rifles. Semi-automatic rifles are present in constant danger. Guns are accessible almost everywhere, and the problem is not the accessories which you can attach to your gun, but the device itself. It's a constant fear and reminder to the American people. I urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you.
Not Adam, great job.
Okay, listen, there should be a sign-in sheet going around. If you're here for extra credit for one of your classes, make sure that you sign that, okay?
That concludes our round 1. Thank you, debaters.
Yes.
Can we ask for his?
Do I have to tell them right now?
They said that, like, either if we didn't want to know, you wouldn't tell us, but if we do, that you guys would tell us.
all want to know. We all do. They all want to know.
Let's get a vote.
We don't like.
All right.
You just want one opinion?
Yeah, we like you.
Actually, I'd like your opinion first, and then the audience.
Yeah, your opinion, then we'll get the audiences.
No, because then couldn't hers influence the others? So
No, she's not
Well,
judge.
so you've already decided, right? So we can ask the audience first if you've already decided. Okay, then the sides can. Peter.
So do a favor for the affirmative.
Good job, guys.
Affirmative.
Affirmative on the right, negative on the left.
Everybody's great.
I'd like to agree.
I'm neutral.
Who agrees for the opposition?
Alright.
Oh,
I guess we can ask it. Alright, what's yours?
I don't like all this pressure.
You gotta go.
I feel like I'm gonna like destroy half of your dreams if I admit it.
Crush it.
It's the weekend. Yeah, you must go now.
It's gonna be
the weekend to cry.
We have the weekend to cry.
I'm gonna go walk so we can
We'll look over. We'll be fine.
I think evidence-wise was interesting, both sides. Some great points on both. I think what kind of helps sway his delivery really does present a sense of urgency and level of like care. And so I think Ian woke us up a little bit with his, and then you responded really, really well.